Welcome to the Own It Powercast, the place to be when you get serious about making big changes and accelerating growth in your life and in your relationships. Finally create the life you've always wanted, living life on your own terms. Learn how to take your fear and turn it into powerful choices that will create sustained change. Now your host, Mary Baker.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Own It Powercast, the place to come to get what you need to move yourself forward. Hey, it's Mary Baker and welcome to episode 251, Finding Safe Relationships, Recognizing the Telltale Signs of Healthy Boundaries. Well, welcome back to this month where we have been talking all about boundaries with a focus on our brains and how and why we might struggle to set them in the moment. So last week, we were focusing on those folks in our life who create those eggshells, who make it very difficult to be around. So how about we change that a little bit this week and talk a bit about who doesn't do that? Like, how do you find the people who don't do that? Today, I want to get into how to recognize the more emotionally mature, safe people. But first, if you're getting all into boundaries, don't forget to check out the courses that I have offered, and everything's in the show notes. You can link right up to them. So I have a couple of selections that you can do depending on where you are in the work. There is a free boundaries ebook with a podcast version there too, and there's worksheets and things to get you thinking and working on yourself. And if you want something a little bit more in depth, don't forget to check out the masterclass, Beyond Words. That's where you can get into how you lost your voice, why it matters that you get it back, and how do you start doing that. And if you really want to do some serious work and make some big changes in your life, check out my course, Find Your Voice. That is a 12-module immersive course that gives you everything that you need and has a great group coaching component and some one-on-one support from me as well. So reach out, message me on social, email me if you have any questions about any of the coursework, and pass the links along to those that you think might benefit. All right, so let's get into what we're talking about today, and that is finding the safe people. Now, I've talked about this topic before on the show, but I don't think you can talk about it enough. Just like you can't talk about the unhealthy stuff enough so that you're aware of what it is and how to look out for it, and how to take care of yourself, we need to look at who are the safe people. And then also, of course, I'm going to say, as you're listening to these criteria, you got to look in the mirror. Because if we want safe people in our life, we also have to work on becoming safer and more mature and more grounded and more approachable. So let's talk about how to find those emotionally safe people. Let's talk about how to recognize their healthy separateness and strong boundaries, the things I talk about here often on the show. We're going to look at the essential qualities that contribute to what I think is a healthy and fulfilling relationship. So let's dive into this topic of how to find these emotionally safe people and what to look for. Because I think when we understand these crucial traits, and they are crucial, they're non-negotiable, I think we can create relationships that are built on trust and respect and emotional safety. Okay, so let's look at what these are. And these are not all of them, but these are, I think, some really basic ones that you want to start with. And again, I call these non-negotiable, but you have to decide for yourself where your bar is. Because I think understanding the traits of healthy boundaries and emotional safety is just so integral to fostering trust and safety in our relationships. Like, you can't have trust and safety without healthy boundaries and without emotional maturity. I just don't believe that that is possible. Can people work on this stuff? Yeah. But I think if that's what you want and that's what you're striving for in your relationship, both of you need to understand that, and you both need to be willing to work on doing the work to get there. So one of the first things you want to look for in a person. Now, this person can be your prospective partner, could be your sibling, your parent, your colleague, your friend, your neighbor, whoever this may be, okay? You want to look at people who can establish respect. So healthy boundaries demonstrate a respect for ourselves and for other people. When we understand and uphold our own boundaries while respecting the boundaries of others, it creates an environment of what I call mutual respect. And this is what helps form that foundation of trust. You want to look at people who can do that. You want to look at people willing to build trust, who talk about trust. And they know and they can tell you and show you that it's built on a foundation of consistency, reliability, and respect. Emotionally safe people who maintain healthy boundaries, I think, demonstrate consistency in their behavior and actions. You've heard me say that before. And I'm not talking perfect, but there is a commitment to the consistency. This consistency builds trust over time as people feel confident that their boundaries are going to be respected and their emotional well-being will be considered. They're big into promoting emotional safety. Emotional safety, I think, is just essential for us to feel comfortable expressing ourselves authentically and vulnerably with someone else. Healthy boundaries contribute to emotional safety by creating a sense of predictability and security. So that's the opposite of waiting for the other shoe to drop or having eggshells on the floor to tiptoe around. So you can relax. When we know our boundaries are going to be respected, I think we feel safer to open up and share our thoughts and our feelings and our experiences because we're not afraid of judgment or rejection. And I also want to add in here, we're not afraid of manipulation and gaslighting and Darvo and all those things too. And rage and just all the scary things. So it feels safe. And I don't think you should be vulnerable in a relationship where there isn't emotional safety. I just don't recommend it. Safe people are really big into preventing harm. And again, not just for you, but for them as well. Understanding and respecting boundaries, I think, helps prevent harm because it establishes clear limits on what's acceptable behavior and what isn't. And so it helps people feel safe from emotional, verbal, or physical harm. I mean, if both people are reading from that dictionary and can follow through on their belief that emotional safety is really important, then you have safety and trust. But it really comes down to recognizing and respecting boundaries, because that way we can navigate disagreements and conflicts in a much healthier way. It can be a lot more constructive, and it probably won't escalate as much. Like people might be upset, but they're being vulnerable and staying on their side and telling you how they feel. And then, of course, healthy boundaries enhances our communication. I think it facilitates open and honest communication. Like we can say the hard things about us and hard things that we need to tell them about them. When we feel safe to express ourselves without fear of judgment or acting out or any kind of reprisal, I think it obviously encourages transparent communication. And then, of course, there's deeper understanding and bonding. Think back for a moment when you've had a connection like that. And even though it may have been overwhelming and kind of scary in the moment, it was pretty profound, especially as you thought about it afterwards. So let's talk about healthy boundaries and why they are the mainstay of safe people. Healthy boundaries are so essential for having what I call healthy separateness, or you can call it autonomy, and self-respect within our relationships. They don't imply isolation or pushing people away or putting up a wall or not caring. Instead, people with healthy boundaries are able to balance their autonomy and independence while still fostering meaningful connections with you. This is how they do that. The first thing they have is self-awareness and self-responsibility. My favorite term. People with healthy boundaries have a strong sense of self-awareness. They can look in the freaking mirror by now. Maybe it took them a while. Maybe they had to work on this. It's okay. But they have a good understanding of their own needs, what their values are, and what their boundaries are. And key is they take responsibility for meeting their own needs and managing their own feelings. This self-awareness, I think, really allows them to maintain a clear sense of who they are, and therefore can have healthy separateness within relationships. When you don't have boundaries, you don't know where you end and other people begin, literally. They can also do clear communication. There isn't guesswork, there isn't innuendo, there's not manipulation going on. There's no head games. Healthy boundaries are established through clear and assertive communication. That's why I'm a big fan of assertiveness. Because I think people with healthy boundaries openly communicate their needs, they tell you their preferences, they can speak about their limits to other people, and so they allow for mutual understanding and respect. They try their best to be honest and open and authentic, regardless of what you might think about that. Now, they have filters, of course, but they're just telling people about them and allowing other people to be where they are because they respect others' autonomy. So while they're maintaining their own boundaries, safe people with healthy boundaries can also respect the autonomy and independence of others. In fact, that's part of the work where when you work on honoring those things for yourself, you naturally understand like, oh yeah, everybody else has those rights too. And I prefer those people in my life to also have boundaries because at this point they get it. They understand why it's so crucial. But they recognize that each of us is responsible for our own stuff. We're all responsible, you hear me say all the time, for our own thoughts, our own feelings, our own actions, and we really try hard to not control and manipulate other people. Safe people can balance closeness and space, so they're not counterdependent, they don't push everyone away, but they're also not all up in your stuff and in your space. They find a balance between closeness and space in their relationships. That way they can have intimacy and connection with you, but they can also honor their need for personal space and alone time, and they don't have a problem talking about that. And guess what? They want you to do the same for yourself. So when I work with couples, I really talk to them about, I really strongly encourage for them to talk about that this is a value. That they openly every week talk about, okay, where's your self-care? Where's my self-care? How do we also do some self-care for the relationship? But they're not threatened by the other person needing their alone time or time with their own friends or to do their own hobbies. It's actually value added. That way they can nurture their relationships without feeling overwhelmed or suffocated. And finally, they can do emotional regulation. So people with healthy boundaries have developed some effective strategies for managing their emotions and coping with stress the best they can. They're able to regulate their emotions independently without relying on you to meet all their emotional needs, to rescue them, to fix their feelings, to make them all better. They don't have to project all their stuff onto you that they can't handle. They have self-regulation, and this allows them, I think, to maintain a sense of emotional independence while still having meaningful connections with you. That takes a lot of maturity, and it takes a lot of work for some people who didn't grow up with that or have some wounds there, but people can do it. So people with healthy boundaries, I think, are able to maintain a sense of healthy separateness while also connecting. And you've heard me say before that when we have better boundaries, we feel safe enough to reach across and want to connect with the other. Because when we connect with them, we know we can also still hold on to who we are, and they can do the same. So balancing closeness and space, mastering emotions, can really help them create relationships that are mutually fulfilling, mutually respectful, and mutually supportive. So let's look at some signs, some clear signs. I talked about the concept. Scratch that. So those are the concepts. Let's look at what that really looks like in real life. The first thing you want to look at look for is that they respect your autonomy and independence without trying to control or manipulate you. And this can be done in a million ways. They could become jealous or aggressive or get upset or pout or shut down or guilt you or manipulate you out of spending time with your friends, let's say, or not coming home for Christmas or wanting to do something different for the weekend. You can have different needs and wants and hobbies and likes and dreams. Safe people communicate their own needs and boundaries openly and assertively. They do not stuff their feelings and then blow up and throw the kitchen sink at you and get nasty and very immature. Their focus is not on you. It's on them. You don't have to guess how they feel and what they need, and they don't expect you to pull it out of them either. They know that it's their responsibility to say, hey, I think I'm feeling pretty wiped out this week and I think I need to take a day off. Or when we talk, you interrupt me often and I'd like you to not do that. Because I'm not going to want to talk if I feel like you're going to interrupt me, not let me finish what I need to say. Okay? And in turn, these people also try to listen actively and validate your feelings without judgment the best they can. We're all human, but they really do make attempts at that, and you know it because they're saying that to you. They're saying things like, I understand you're really upset. That makes sense. You're pissed. You're hurt. You're hurt that I hurt you. You're pissed that I let you down. You have a right to feel that way. And then they take responsibility for their own actions and emotions without blaming other people. They may start out and say, man, my boss or my coworker or my brother, but then they quickly bring it into self and say, but I guess I got to grieve that, or I need to find a different job, or I need to set boundaries with my brother, or I need to do something. They bring it back to self and say, what do they need to do? How are they feeling? How do they own their feelings? Another big thing that they do is they try to offer support and encouragement to you without trying to fix you or rescue you. So what does that look like? They're listening without judgment. They're not making your stuff about them. So, for example, when a friend is going through a difficult time, instead of immediately offering solutions or trying to fix their problems, they're listening attentively and empathetically. They're validating their friend's feelings and letting them know that they're there for them without imposing their own opinions or trying to fix the situation by not saying, you know what you should do? You should do this. Instead, they would own it. Let's say they were really worried about you. They'd say, you know, this is about me. I understand that I'm just really freaked out by what's going on for you. I'd like to offer some solutions if you want them. But they're not hell-bent on you saying yes to that request either. They can let go. If not, you know you're dealing with control. These safe people make empowering choices. So if you're facing a decision, they offer support by helping you explore your options and encouraging you to make your own choices based on what feels right for you. And this is hard, right? We're not all great at this. Rather than imposing their preferences or trying to control the outcome, they empower you to take ownership of your decisions. They can do the healthy, loving detachment. That's not easy, especially because they care about you. Maybe the outcome affects them too. They provide emotional validation. So when you're expressing your feelings, whether it's sadness, this is key, anger or frustration, they can validate your feelings by acknowledging your experience and expressing empathy the best they can. It's going to be hard if you're pissed at them or if they have let you down. That guilt's going to kill them, right? But at least they can walk back in the room a minute later and say, look, it's okay to feel that way. And I'm here to support you, and I'm so sorry I screwed up, and I'll do anything to make it up to you. Can we sit down and talk about it more? Safe people are into and encourage personal growth. So if they see you facing a challenge or a setback, they're going to offer you encouragement, and they're going to try to highlight your strengths and your resilience, that you haven't given up. They're going to remind you of past successes and reassure you that you have the ability to overcome obstacles. But they're not swooping in to rescue you from your difficulties. They're going to let you sit in your ship when you need to, because they know you might need to do that. But they do encourage you to learn and grow from your experience. They may, with your permission, share their own stuff that they walked through that was very similar. Sometimes we want to hear that because we need to relate. We need to know that we can do this and that someone else has done it and we're not alone, and that it's possible to fix it and to change. They have boundaries around offering help. So they respect the boundaries of other people by offering support and encouragement without imposing themselves or overstepping. They'll ask you if you're open to receiving advice or assistance before offering it. Can I help you with that? Can I support you with that? And they're okay, this is the key, when you say, no, I'm good, they respect your decision to handle it on your own. What this does is it shows that they can value your autonomy and independence. And they can still be there to offer support, but they don't need to grab identity from being the end-all be-all for you, or to be able to solve this problem for you, or give you all the beautiful, perfect answers. Okay. So those are some things you want to look for. Again, not perfect, but you want to look at people who, A, can talk about these things openly, B, who value them, and C, work on them. And then they talk about how they struggle with them too. They can come in and say, God, I'm really sorry, but yesterday when we talked, I was like overstepping and giving you all this unsolicited advice because I was really worried about you. They can own it. So those are some healthy things. There's a few other things I want you to look out for and pay attention to. You're just going to observe. I'm not asking you to take any action. In fact, I don't recommend it yet until you get a little more comfortable with this and you get some coaching and some support around it. Our Facebook group is a great place to come to because this is the stuff that we talk about every Wednesday night, and we talk about it in between Wednesdays. Okay. So first, I want you to pay attention to how they respond to any constructive feedback or criticism. You're not going off on them. But maybe you're sharing that you're a little upset because they lost the keys, or they're sharing with you how someone else responded to them that day. Do they get defensive? Do they play victim? Do they skew the narrative to make them look like so innocent and poor them and how dare these people or how dare you, right? Do they try to rewrite the narrative? And so what you want to hear instead is maybe a little defensiveness at first, but they immediately say, okay, all right, or they listen. Another thing to look for is, do they maybe get upset, but again, walk back in the room a minute later and own it? Or do they try to talk you out of your truth in a million different ways that people can do that? Or can they say, you know what? You got a point. Someone else said that to me last week. I know I'm really struggling with this. And or, I'm sorry I got defensive. I was afraid of your condemnation. I was afraid of how you'd see me if you knew that about me, if that was true. Like I blew it. I'm so embarrassed, right? And so they own their guilt and their embarrassment, maybe their shame, maybe all the above, and then all their fear. If we weren't afraid of rejection and abandonment, we'd tell everybody everything, right? Nothing to fear. A big area you want to look at is to see how they handle when bad things happen, when frustrations arise, when there are disagreements or conflicts. Can they do it with grace and respect and maturity or not? Can they be emotionally honest, have good boundaries, and not act out? Or do conflicts quickly escalate and they become defensive and start gaslighting and manipulating or shutting down and people-pleasing? There's a million different ways that could go. A big thing you want to look for, too, is observe their self-care. Do they have any self-care? Do they talk about it? Do they value it? Do they implement it in their life and not just pay it lip service? And do they respect your boundaries as well? Or are they blowing up your phone all day long when they're dating you? Or when they're going through a crisis and they can't stop calling you or texting you? Those are some things to look for. Not when everything is going great. What you want to do is look how they hear no, observe to see if they can say no. Have they said no to you? Right? Like, when's the last time they said no to you in a healthy way? Where they said something like, I'm so sorry, I just can't help you with that next week. Or, I can't go out tonight, I'm really tired. Or, I need you to respect that Sunday is for me. And I like to go do some things for myself. Do they talk about saying no to others and how that went in a healthy way? Or was it just a mess? And are they fighting